On the Republican side, J.D. Vance is the leading candidate in the betting odds, with Marco Rubio as my personal choice for his vice presidential pick. On the Democrat side, Pete Buttigieg is the current front runner without Harris in the race, and I do believe that she won't run for president as of right now, and so I believe Pete Buttigieg would win the Democratic nomination, alongside with AOC being his vice presidential pick. Looking at the safe Republican states, Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, the Dakotas, all of Nebraska, including the 1st Congressional District, as well as Oklahoma, Kansas, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, Missouri, Kentucky, West Virginia, South Carolina, and Texas, as well as Alaska and Alabama, are all in the safe Republican column at 154 electoral college votes. Looking at the Democratic safe states, California, Oregon, Washington, Illinois, Massachusetts, Maryland, D.C., Hawaii, Vermont, Connecticut is also going to be in that safe Democratic column as of right now. Well, actually, no, it is not in the safe Democratic column. Rhode Island, on the other hand, will actually be in that safe Democratic column. But even Maine's first is also going to be in that safe column. All of these states that are filled in safe for either party are currently safe and have voted for the party in the last quite a few elections. Actually, for the last, I believe 6 to 7 elections, these states have voted with the party that they are currently shaded in for. And so now we're going to be filling out all of these states. So really looking at the safe Republican states, the additional ones, Iowa, Indiana, Ohio, and Florida, are all in that safe Republican column as of right now. Nebraska's first is more than likely still going to be in that safe Republican column as of right now. It is still over a 12-point win in this hypothetical matchup. Looking at some of the other states here, for the likely Democratic states, Colorado will still be in the likely Democratic column at 11.2% for Pete Buttigieg, which is a 0.2 percentage point improvement from Kamala Harris's victory in the last election. It's a very, very minor improvement. Pete Buttigieg nationwide will do very bad with African American voters as well as with Hispanic voters, but I do believe with white college educated voters, he will perform substantially better than what Kamala Harris did in the last election. And so I think Colorado isn't going to really move anywhere, despite Vance doing better than Donald Trump at a national level. I really don't see Colorado really moving in either direction. And we look, for example, at Maine at large. It is a 7.6 percentage point win. So a slight improvement from Harris's 6.9 percentage point win in the state of Maine. I'm going to be putting this in the likely column, with Maine second being in that likely Republican column under 12 points as of right now. New York, Connecticut, and Delaware are all in this likely Democratic column. Delaware actually drops to an 8-point win, and this is mainly because Pete Buttigieg in the polling does not do well with black voters in the Democratic primary whatsoever. He actually does very, very badly with this demographic. And so because of that, the state is going to narrow up quite significantly. And the Catholic vote as well in the Northeast does shift Connecticut quite significantly into the Republican column. Only like an 100,000 vote win for Pete Buttigieg as of right now. It's a way closer margin of victory compared to Harris winning it by 14.5. So that state is going to shift very, very heavily into the Republican column by 8 points. And we see Delaware shift into the Republican column by 7 points. You can clearly see on this shift map that, Pete Buttigieg actually gains in Montana. He gains in Minnesota, Kansas, Nebraska, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and, Oregon and Washington, and a lot of areas with decently sized college educated populations actually don't really shift as much to the right as some other states do, where you have a lot more more Hispanic and black population. So it's sort of a continuation of the last election's trends. Buttigieg and AOC wouldn't really do well with Hispanic voters compared to the rest of the nation. I think they do absolutely god awful with them. But Vance is going to do decent with with non-college whites. He'll do pretty good with those. But with the college white voters, I think he's going to substantially underperform with them. And we see that New Hampshire is even a lean Democratic state, is a 2-point improvement from Kamala Harris's victory of about 2.8% here. It is again, a slight improvement from the last election. And we do see that it shifts away from the incumbent party, which it usually does. Nebraska, I'd see it being like a 5.5-point win. The state of Nebraska is like an 18-point win, so it actually is slightly closer than 2024. So it actually shifts away, and this is mainly because if you look at the shift map, a lot of places in Nebraska second end up shifting to the left. So that's why you end up having that state end up moving a little bit more left than what it actually would in a normal election. Utah, you can see Wyoming, Idaho, like a lot of these states are actually super Republican, like Missouri, even like Tennessee and Kentucky. Indiana even shifts Republican. West Virginia does. South Carolina is a almost 24-point win here. And again, it's mainly because Pete just does god awful with black voters and Hispanic voters overall. So those are the likely Democratic states in the field there. As for the likely Republican states, Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, and Nevada are all pretty solid GOP states this time around. I mean, they've been, Georgia and North Carolina recently have been somewhat more competitive. North Carolina has been a lot more competitive in 2008, 12, 16. It's been a single digit, state. It hasn't decided an election. The last 5 elections have been decided by less than 5 points in the state of North Carolina. So it's actually a really interesting dynamic there. But I do think with the black vote turnout decrease and rural support gaining for JD Vance, I just can't see Pete Buttigieg doing well. Like even Pete Buttigieg doesn't even crack 2 million votes in Georgia, given how much he loses with the black vote in the state. And a lot of the black voters in Georgia and North Carolina tend to be a lot more conservative socially. And so that's why he ends up performing absolutely disastrous in those areas. And even like Arizona is an 11.5-point win for Vance. And in Nevada, that's a very, very clear win there, given his victories in Clark County, and they do shift quite massively into his column. You could even see here, like the majority of the shift in the southern states actually comes from the black populated areas. In this part, you even see a lot of these black counties like 16-point win, 15-point win, and you even see like in Georgia, the places that shift the least in his column are a lot of the areas that are mostly white, and even some like outskirts here. In some of the outskirts of the like suburban areas are trending left. A lot of places in Florida actually moved left. Like a lot of the whiter areas actually moved a little bit left here for Pete. But like again, in Miami-Dade, Vance gains quite extensively. Like it is a huge difference there compared to before. And so because of that, you do see Vance perform way better in the Sunbelt states than Trump could have basically ever performed there. And Trump won all of them by lean margins. For Pete, I mean, what's really interesting is that New Mexico is actually just below the 2-point column. It rounds out to 2 points, but it's like really close. And with that Hispanic vote there, it really shifts the state quite massively there. The white voters here are actually very liberal, so that's kind of what keeps the state from flipping Republican. But because of that, because of the Hispanic voters continuing to shift right, it actually is a really, really close state. And even look at that. Texas, a 22-point win for Vance. Like that is a huge margin of victory for him. That is like huge. And you even see it here, like Harris County's really close. Dimmitt County's a +5 county for Vance, and Jim Hogg, Brooks, all these, counties are way closer. It's basically like a deep red behemoth down there pretty much. So it is a humongous overperformance there for Vance in Texas. Like it is really, really bad. You even see like El Paso is only a 4-point win for Pete Buttigieg. That's like really, really close. That is like an extremely, extremely close matchup there. So that is absolutely insane that you're seeing that much of a difference in Texas. It's literally it's a lot more Republican than like Iowa and Ohio are, because in Iowa and Ohio, a lot of the suburban areas kind of shift to the left as some of the righter areas shift Republican. You even see it like in Ohio, like there's some white areas here that shift left, and like this middle part shifts left by 8 points, which is like pretty crazy. But we do see like Portage is Democratic, shifts Democrat, like some of the right areas kind of, but the most of the state actually ends up shifting Republican to an extent. So you do see that there over time. And we continue on to some of the northern states. Virginia is only a 4-point win for Pete Buttigieg, and we look at the shift map here. Look at that. All of the areas that have a lot of the more black population, they are shifting super hard Republican, like very hard Republican. But a lot of these wider suburban areas are actually quite left trending for the most part and don't really move that much in the Republican column. And so because of that, you end up getting a much closer Georgia, but not by a lot. It's not like that much closer compared to 2024, where Harris won the state by like 6. It's like a 2-point improvement for JD Vance there. New Jersey actually doesn't really budge from the last election. It kind of maxes out for Republicans here. Vance gets 2.1 million. Pete Buttigieg gets 2.3 million, or almost 2.4 million here actually. And if you look at the shift map, you see, like, funny enough, the state that Pete Buttigieg actually shifts the most counties in is actually New Jersey, because a lot of like these suburban areas kind of move away from Vance. He does a lot better there, but like the northern eastern part where a lot more minorities are situated, you see that Vance performs like significantly better in those areas. So the state kind of does like a weird realignment again, but it basically is like 0.1 percentage points closer than the last matchup. And then in Minnesota, you see that, Pete Buttigieg is winning the state by like, it's almost a likely margin in Minnesota, but it's just below the 6-point threshold there. And so that just leaves really the Rust Belt states up for grabs. In Michigan and Pennsylvania shift into the lean Republican column. They were tilt states last time. Michigan ends up shifting the most to the right and is the most Republican leaning, basically the most Republican leaning Rust Belt state out of the whole map. And this is mainly because of Pete Buttigieg's weakness with black voters. I mean, you see like, he actually gains in some of the wider suburbs, but like in Wayne County, he loses 5 points there, which 5 points in Wayne County is a huge vote difference. And Vance continues to gain in the rural areas. The only areas where he doesn't really gain is like some of these weird suburban areas that have already been trending left, but that's it. Like other than that, Vance has improved tremendously in Michigan. And then in Pennsylvania, Vance gains a point from Trump in 2024. And what's really interesting is if you look at most of the state, like Vance kind of gains in some like rural areas, but that's about it. I mean, in most of the suburban areas, he actually kind of underperforms for the most part. Chester County shifts 8 points left. Like he actually doesn't perform very well in like western rural Pennsylvania. He actually does terrible. The reason why he gains a point is some rural movement, but the main reason is Philadelphia, where again, Pete Buttigieg just tanks with the black vote, and Vance gains a very significant amount of the vote share there. It's a 7-point shift, while the rest of the state's kind of like a wash. So that's why you end up getting him winning the state by almost 3 points there. Vance gets 3.8 million votes, and Pete gets 3.6 million in the state of Pennsylvania. And then in Wisconsin, the final swing state here, it's a really high turnout election, and Vance basically improves by like 0.2% or like 0.15% from Trump. So he does slightly better in Wisconsin than Trump did in 2024. But the problem here is you see like in Ozaukee, it shifts left, Racine and Kenosha shift, like a lot of places end up shifting left, like a lot of these counties do. And it's mostly because of that like white suburban college educated voter. You're having a lot of shifts there. A lot of the rural areas kind of like are like very, very still. But what saves Vance and what kind of pushes him over is gaining a lot of points in Sauk County, and in Milwaukee he gained 7 points there, and that's where the few black voters in Wisconsin are, and that's Pete Buttigieg's really bad weakness. So Vance is going to continue gaining with the black voters from Trump for the most part. And we even look at like New York City, for example. Like, look how bad it is in New York City. Like, Vance is gaining 8 points in the Bronx. He gets over 100,000 votes in the Bronx on top of Trump's performance there, which is like insane. That is a crazy shift map. Like that is actually like a very, very insane shift map. And Pete Buttigieg overall isn't really performing that much better. Nationwide in a lot of places, just this kind of like pocket here in like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, he's actually doing quite well. But other than that, in the rest of the nation, yes, he gains in like some places. He gains 8 points in Johnson County, in Kansas. So Kansas actually shifts left by like 2 points, but that's it. I mean, that's literally it. And you can see clearly, I mean, JD gains in most of the states nationwide. There's very few states on the map where he actually loses ground from 2024 compared to Trump. But like you see Oregon and Washington shift left because of that, college educated population. You're seeing a shift left. California is like really crazy because the Hispanic shift massively Republican. Vance actually gained 7 points from the last cycle, which is like wild. He gained 7 points from Trump's performance there. He gained 7 percentage points. And it's really not because he gets as many votes as Trump. He actually doesn't. It's because Pete Buttigieg's turnout is so low in California. Pete only gets 7.8 million votes in California, which is a really bad performance for a modern day Democrat. And you see Pete is gaining in some of the whiter areas, but like in some of the Hispanic counties, Vance is gaining like 7, 10, 10 points here, 7 points there. He even gains 8 points in San Diego, to the point where San Diego is literally a D+9 county. And just for the record, Harris won it by 17 points. So that is like a really big overperformance for Vance in San Diego. Like, that is a huge overperformance for Vance there. And so when you're looking at the electoral map here, Vance is at 312 electoral college votes to Pete Buttigieg's and AOC's 226 electoral college votes. It's the same map from 2024 with different coalitions for the most part. And Vance realistically has an even more comfortable victory over Pete than even Donald Trump had against, Kamala Harris. Because even if Wisconsin flipped, you would have needed millions, not millions of more votes, but you would have at least needed like 500,000 votes across the 3 Rust Belt states in order to even like barely squeak out the win. And so if you guys did enjoy this hypothetical video, make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content just like this. And I will see you guys in the next video.